and welcome to yet another installment of No Smoke, Just Vapor. Continuing on the science of vaping, we will be talking about the manufacturing of e-liquid, and I'm joined by Mr. David Britz. David, hi.
Hi, Asanda. Thank you very much for having me on.
And thank you for coming.
Pleasure.
Can you just tell our viewers a bit about the company that you work for and what it is exactly that you do?
Certainly. So myself and my business partner, we own a business called Northern Craft Vapes Pty Ltd. We've been around probably since the beginning of vaping in this country, since 2015. And we manufacture and supply e-liquids for, your normal vaping devices, whether it's a large device down to the small device or smoking cessation, that sort of thing. We do all of it.
People say juice, e-liquid, fuel. What is this thing that we're talking about?
Yeah, so there are a number of names for it. We obviously stick to the standard one, e-liquid. And so that's ordinarily the substance that goes into your vaping device, and that's what creates the flavor and the vapor that you see when you inhale and exhale.
And what's typically in an e-liquid?
So e-liquids are generally made of 4 ingredients. VG, or vegetable glycerin, PG, propylene glycol. There'll be food-grade flavorings that are inside there, and then obviously the nicotine. And that varies in strength depending on the product that you purchase.
And then when you look at the vegetable glycerin, I think some of our viewers are thinking vegetable. What other products? Can you give us other products that have the same ingredients?
Yeah, the majority of the products in your household will have VG or vegetable glycerin in them.
Okay.
It's completely safe. You could ingest it normally, no problem whatsoever. PG, same story. A lot of your household products contain PG. I don't have any exact examples for you right now, but if you had to pick up most of the things in your house and read through them, you'll find those two inside there. And then the flavorings, so we use food-grade flavorings from around the world. Those are all generally PG based as well, because PG is a flavor carrier inside a normal blend of e-liquid. And then it's the nicotine, and I'm sure you have a lot of questions around the nicotine.
Yes, around the nicotine. And in terms of where you would source your nicotine, what considerations, because I'm bringing up nicotine because with the current tobacco bill that's currently sitting in Parliament, there's a lot of debate on nicotine and whether it's harmful or not. And everyone is saying, yes, it causes cancer, it causes that kind of stuff. So tell us a bit about what nicotine is, where you source your nicotine, and what standards you apply to get the right kind of grade.
Yeah, so there's obviously probably a number of suppliers of nicotine. We use a company called Pure Plus. They're an international company, but they manufacture locally. And they use imported raw materials to create it. And one of the major reasons why we chose them is the overall standard and quality of their products is excellent, and we use them throughout our entire product range. But also there's local liability. They batch locally. We've been to their facility. We've seen how it gets made, where it's made. And obviously it's incredibly important that it's of the highest standard, quality, and purity. Nicotine in and of itself obviously is the substance that makes vaping feel good, or whatever it is that you need from it if you're quitting smoking, and you should only really vape if you quit smoking. But and there's obviously the different types of nicotine, whether it's freebase or the salt nic, and I'm sure you'd like me to explain to you the difference between those two. So the majority of the devices that people generally start vaping are freebase nicotine. Those are generally in strengths of 3 or 6 milligrams, and they are normally a bit thicker, and that's what gives you the big vapor production that most people see. They're also a little bit harsher on the throat, and that's why salt nic exists. Salt nicotine is no different to freebase nicotine, except it's got a lower pH. So the alkalinity in it is lower, and it results in a smoother feeling on the throat. If you were to try and ingest or try and inhale the same amount of nicotine with a freebase as you would with a salt, you'll get a much harsher throat hit. And a lot of people who quit smoking and try, vaping and e-cigarettes, the harshness on the throat is initially what they don't like. So the salt nic is just a much easier way for people to get into it from smoking.
And when it comes to flavoring, that's another big one, because there is a possible regulation that says the minister may decide to ban certain flavors. I mean, when you look across the world, what has happened in other countries, that the importance of flavors has been diminished, you know, all in the quest of protecting young people.
Yeah.
We'll come to that part of things. But how important are flavors? And for you as a manufacturer, I'm sure you put so much into putting together a flavor, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, I understand the argument around youth and flavoring, and I do get that, but you also get flavored alcohol. And that's intended for adults only. But yeah, the flavorings are important, and I think there's a lot of manufacturers, but what makes you competitive as a manufacturer is the flavoring profile that you choose and manufacture. So, I mean, as I said before, we source our flavors from literally all over the world, whether it's America, EU, and those again are also of the highest, you know, possible grade and strength that we can get a hold of. They come with all their certifications. We obviously then do the R&D and blend them, and that's what ends up in people's hands as the flavor profile that they choose. And generally people are, I mean, more susceptible to trying something that tastes better than as to something that doesn't, especially like as a smoker. Yeah.
Yeah, because some of the conversations we've had with smokers is, I don't want to go vape a tobacco flavored e-liquid, you know.
Yeah.
And in terms of demand then, from a manufacturing point of view, have you found that there's certain flavors that resonate with a South African palate? I will call it a South African palate, lack of a better word.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are what we call like local flavors, things that are only like available here, whether it's like a bubblegum milkshake or a milk tart sort of flavor. We generally find that most people enjoy fruit flavors. And I'd say it's probably a 70-30 split. People enjoy fruit flavors and then 30% for just about everything else. Whether it's a dessert or a confectionery or item or something like that. But generally the fruit does really well.
And I mean, do you agree with the sentiment that adults also have taste buds, you know?
100%. And this takes me back to my argument about flavored alcohol. I mean, just because something is flavored doesn't mean it's intended solely for attracting a youthful person. I mean, I'm 34 now and I still vape a caramel flavor every day.
So
I like the flavor of it.
Yeah.
And I would have no interest in creating any tobacco flavor because it just doesn't taste as nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, flavors are quite central to the experience.
No, they're incredibly
of vaping.
important.
And that takes us then now to the current bill. One would think, I mean, the consultation is important, you know, where these kinds of proposals happen. Was your particular sector, and I mean by sector, I mean your segment, manufacturers, where you guys consulted or asked for information on how you put together these flavors, what's important, what's not important?
Not at all.
Not at all.
I can tell you right now. I have a legal background, so and I'm regularly in contact with you guys as to any sort of communication that happens between the powers that be and us. And I've not personally been contacted, and none of the manufacturers that I speak to have any consultation that's happened between themselves and the bills creators.
An important point, Dave, that we hear a lot about is the potential dangers of inhaling something you haven't certified, you know, that you don't know what's inside this product. We are currently operating not only in a legislative vacuum, but we don't have product standards as a country, you know.
Of course.
So in terms of protecting consumers, what are some of the things that you guys abide by? Because I know if there's no local standard, there are other standards that govern your manufacturing processes. Can you tell us a bit about that?
No, of course. I mean, so in terms of raw materials, we go to great lengths to make sure that everything that we use and purchase and put into our products is certified, and there's paperwork, there's batchability, traceability, and there's liability and accountability with every single one of our manufacturing partners that gives us raw material. From our side, we utilize ISO 7 standards. We have air handling facilities in which the products are made and manufactured, and they are held to an extremely clean standard. We also batch our products, and we make sure we know if there's an issue with one, we can call back to it and find and see exactly what is involved in its manufacturing. So insofar as the standards process goes, we do all that we possibly can without there being a specific regulation as set up by government. And I'm not aware of any other industry that's unregulated that goes to the same lengths to do so. I mean, it is something that is important. It's something that people put in their bodies. So we take great pride and care in making sure that our products are as best as they can be.
And with that, what are your views then on your backyard manufacturers? I mean, I'm taken back to the times of COVID where everyone was an e-liquid manufacturer, you know, in their back room. And I mean, we laugh about it now, but it's quite
it's a problem.
It's a big problem.
It's a massive problem.
So what do you know about that unregulated and I don't know, unprofessional niche?
Look, I mean, so for our part, we don't obviously have much communication with. It's weird how a sector can be split,
Yes.
But I mean, there will 100% be people who are not adhering to the same standards. I mean, to give you an idea, our air handling facility works on like a parts per million count of like the air quality as to whether or not there's contaminants in it. If someone's making that stuff in their kitchen or their house, I mean, you're not going to have the same standard of quality. And if they're doing it from a sort of home point of view, and I don't want to take food out of people's mouths, but are they really caring about the certifications that they get for all the products that they use? You know, you have to question the entire supply chain then. It's difficult. But I would not recommend anybody that doesn't have, if you're going to purchase a product, I would not recommend it unless it's been manufactured by one of the local large companies or even possibly an imported product. But generally there must be some sort of ISO rating on the product.
Okay.
Then you at least will know that it's not made in someone's house.
Yes, I was about to ask that as a consumer, I mean, I have no way of knowing whether this was made in a proper lab with all of that stuff. So what are some of the key things? So I get to a shop, I see an e-liquid. What are some of the markers that I need to be looking out for?
Generally, as a identification, don't try and buy a product that looks like something familiar. A lot of the replica products that get brought into the country, they end up trying to pass off like Nesquik, for example. They'll use a lot of the sort of font type and typeface, and it'll look very similar. But that generally is not something that the local manufacturers do, as I'm sure you're aware. Buy from a reputable store. Don't buy out of people's boots, and even some flea markets
I was going to say the flea
those
markets.
are a problem. China malls, those sorts of things. And generally, if you're purchasing from a reputable, you know, a vape store, most of the stuff in there comes from the majority of the people who are already VPA members, and they all observe as closely as possible, if not to the letter, the sort of self-regulating standards that we've given ourselves.
No, that's a good one, because I think oftentimes you hear consumers, how do I know, you know? And in instances then, Dave, where now we are close to having standards for the country, how do you see that changing the manufacturing landscape, if at all?
I think it will, and I think it's a necessary evil, if you want to say. What you're doing is you're creating products that are intended for human use, and there needs to be standards, strict ones.
Yes.
As much as compliance is a problem, but if you wish to operate and continue to be in that sector of the industry, you should comply, and they're necessary. Otherwise, you'll have, and it's one of my arguments about the tax that we had previously, is that you create an illicit trade and demand for illicit goods. Standards are important. We need them. We can't self-regulate anymore.
Yes, I mean, the industry needs to professionalize.
100%.
And I think speaking then on the standards, obviously you would use best practice, you know, in terms of what other countries have done. And I mean, we had a doctor in one of our previous episodes talking about the levels of toxins that are found in some of the e-liquids. You have your lead and whatnot. And he spoke about the levels that can be absorbed by the body, you know, and how that's important. And he spoke about a negative list where you can look at these products can't have certain things. And one of the things that has been a bone of contention is diacetyl as an ingredient in some of the e-liquids. What are your views on that?
Look, Asanda, I'm going to be completely honest with you. My business partner is generally the the guy who deals with the exact concentrations that are within our products. But diacetyl, I mean, let me put it to you this way: the majority of the e-liquid that I used to vape, and I mean, I quit smoking in 2013, and I've been vaping since then. Those products all had diacetyl in them. I'm now 34, and I have no health issues whatsoever. I think diacetyl becomes a problem when there's extremely large concentrations, and I think that's where that popcorn lung
Yes,
story came from.
conversation,
But I stand to be corrected, but I think that popcorn lung was as a result of diacetyl being in like tons in a factory, and it happening to some workers. But insofar as e-liquids are concerned, I mean, I think a lot of the concentrates that people will be using now for the flavorings and stuff have already been certified as diacetyl free.
Which is something that then continues in terms
Yeah,
of the
and a lot of
production.
the international companies that you would source the concentrates from have moved away from diacetyl being in them.
Yeah.
So you'd probably find that the majority of the products available here locally don't contain it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Dave, that's all the time we have for today.
Thank you very much
so
for your
much for
time.
your time. Very enlightening, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. There's so much that goes into the manufacturing of e-liquid. And again, to stress a point Dave made, buy from reputable stores when you buy your products. And if you are ever in doubt, ask. But do not buy from places that make you uncomfortable. And don't forget to like or subscribe to our channel, and do share some of our content, or rather all of our content, to your friends. Until next time, thank you.